Welcome. I'm Kate Mueller, Chief Product Owl and Resident Cheesemonger here at KnowledgeOwl, and welcome to the September product newsletter, which also accidentally is kind of the August product newsletter. So here's what happened. I wrote the entire August product newsletter, recorded the video for it, scheduled everything to send, but then didn't actually hit the button to tell it to send. So most of you never saw August's. So what I've basically done is combine the text for both August and September into this single email newsletter, but I'm including August's original video as a separate thing because trying to record 2 months worth of feature walkthrough is not fun and a very long video for all of you. So if you're still interested in seeing what happened in August, it was a good month for us. Go watch the other video. And for now, I'm just going to walk through what we've gotten through in the last month. So September was oddly a little bit quiet for us in terms of volume of things released because we were working on getting a couple really large things out the door. So I'm going to focus on the super large things. And the biggest of these is the long-awaited change to SMTP. So I mentioned this in previous newsletters as a coming soon situation. And we are finally here. The moment has arrived. Thank goodness. So previously, when you configured SMTP for use with subscriptions or reader emails, you had to configure that SMTP directly at the site where you were using it. So it might be within the subscription settings of an individual knowledge base, or it might be within the your account readers settings for your overall account. And there were a few things that we've never liked about that arrangement. One of them is that if you're using the same SMTP for subscriptions in multiple knowledge bases or for subscriptions and for reader emails, you had to basically configure it twice or 3 times or 4 times. And if you needed to update it, you had to remember all of the places you needed to update it. So one of those is just like not great data storage. The other is that because those SMTP services were being configured directly at the point of the feature, it meant that sometimes people who knew nothing about SMTP had the permission to edit, delete, or otherwise change those SMTP services. And most of us don't think about SMTP in our lives a whole lot. It usually requires working with an IT administrator to get things set up. So there's a number of reasons why you might not want just anybody who's updating subscriptions to be able to edit the details of an SMTP service. So to address all of those things, we basically migrated SMTP from being a feature and knowledge base specific thing to being set up for your entire account. So you'll now have this option in your account that says SMTP. It is pre-populated with all of the SMTP services across your entire account, which we migrated in here. And there's a couple things to pay attention to. Since these are now account-wide, any place that you can actually use SMTP, like subscriptions or the reader emails, will have a drop-down to show all of the available SMTP services that have been configured so that you can select one of them. So to populate that dropdown, we created this friendly name field for SMTP services. And we pre-generated the names for this so that your dropdown would have some stuff in it. So if you were using SMTP for your account reader emails, that will be called account reader SMTP. If you're using it for subscriptions, it will get the name of the knowledge base that those subscriptions are set up in, followed by reader subscription SMTP. So come in here, update those friendly names to something that is actually meaningful to you. Also, review the SMTPs and see if you're reusing the same thing multiple times. Let's get rid of those extra ones and set everything up to use a single SMTP so you can really leverage the power of your account. I'm going to talk about a lot of this stuff in way more detail on Wednesday, September 27th. I'm doing a Wisdom Wednesday session on both this larger migration as well as some of the new offerings in SMTP. So if you really want the more detailed deep dive, come join me for that. One other quick thing, there were really a handful of SMTP services that we had trouble migrating. Some of them were just incomplete when they were originally set up. Some of them were created by copies of knowledge bases, and it turns out when we were copying knowledge bases, we couldn't copy the password properly. If you are one of those folks, you will have this big kind of scary warning up here telling you which SMTP services weren't properly configured, and you'll have some little warning exclamation points next to them. If you were one of these folks, you already have an email from either me or Anne about this, letting you know we tried to default these to an SMTP service that was properly set up. The other big change to SMTP is that we have started to expand the type of service you can have. So previously, we allowed you to have an unauthenticated SMTP service, as well as any type of basic authentication, which is a username password combo. A lot of the SMTP providers are moving away from that basic authentication into an OAuth2 authentication model, which it's a bit more complicated. You have a login email. You basically set up a little application on the SMTP side that has an ID for that app and some kind of secret, which is similar to a password for the app. And then we basically have to pass this entire package of information over to the provider, who gives us an access token back. And that token is actually what gets used to send all of the emails. So it's really just a couple extra hurdles that make it a bit more secure. But because of that extra complexity, OAuth2 is very specific to the individual SMTP provider. So we're only building out OAuth2 based on customer requests for individual providers. And we had the most requests for Microsoft out of the gate. So Microsoft is what we have built. If you are using Microsoft with basic authentication, we've got documentation on switching to OAuth2. I would strongly encourage you to talk to your IT administrator about making that change, because Microsoft has been pretty heavy-handed about trying to cut off basic authentication. So there's a chance that your subscriptions will just stop working at some point. If you have another provider who's been encouraging or trying to require you to move to OAuth2, please submit to our support team and let us know who that provider is. As I said, we're only building this out based on need and customer request. So we're only going to touch those providers if we hear from you that those providers matter to you. So the SMTP stuff is really the big change in September. The smaller change that we snuck in was just to build out a little bit more in customized text. We have now added the article lists to customized text. You might be familiar with these. By default, we dump 3 of them into your knowledge base homepage, which is the popular articles, the new articles, and the updated articles lists. All of those include a see more link when there's more than 5 articles there, and clicking that link will actually open a separate page for each of them. So for each of those lists, you can customize the see more link, the none text that gets displayed when there's nothing in the list, as well as the heading of the page that we generate to display all of them. So if you've been using these and you wanted to kind of rebrand them a little bit, you now have the power to do that. We also included 2 article lists that are optional that you can add on. One of them is recent articles. The other is favorite articles. So both of these are only relevant if you are using individual reader logins in some way, whether that's through KnowledgeOwl, whether it's through single sign-on or remote authentication. We need to have an individual reader account to tie this to. Both of those lists are also included. As with some of the changes to the article template, there are a few of these that you may see a prompt if you go to edit it. This one is a good example. That you might need to make updates to either your knowledge base theme or your homepage if you are trying to edit this text. That's just because a lot of these headings we hard coded into people's homepages or people's themes when we built knowledge bases previously. And so you just need to update the theme to use the merge code. The Wisdom Wednesday session I did on this, I think in July, on the article template, basically walks through that whole process. So there's a video that you can reference to get to a lot of that. The other software specific section that I want to talk about is some new stuff that we have coming. I finally get to talk about something other than SMTP. You have no idea how excited I am about this. So we've got 2 changes coming up for sure that I wanted to highlight. One of them is around folks using private domains who have been using reCAPTCHA. reCAPTCHA we require for certain feature sets, like if you're using the contact form, if you are enabling subscriptions on a publicly available knowledge base, or if you are allowing people to comment who haven't logged into your knowledge base. And we've gotten feedback from some customers that they really don't want to be using a Google product for this. So we have been rolling our own alternative to reCAPTCHA to bypass a lot of the data practice and security concerns there. My hope is that we have that home-rolled solution out in the month of October. So if removing all the Google things from your knowledge base matters to you, keep an eye peeled on the release notes and or the October product newsletter. We should have information on that available as soon as we get it released. The other change is likely not going to be in October. It is a larger change, but it has to do with custom author roles. So we give you 2 default author roles, the editor and writer role, and then you can create additional custom roles, which give you more fine-grained nuance over what people can and can't do when they log into KnowledgeOwl. And one of the areas that we're trying to build out is the permission structure around versions. So right now, we have an explicit permission for being able to create new versions. And then we have a permission that is both publishing articles and activating new versions. But that's pretty much it. And those are pretty broad. And so what we are working to build out is a much more detailed permission structure here that would include creating new versions, editing inactive versions, deleting versions, as well as activating versions, and having that activation being something separate from publishing articles. So for those of you using custom roles to have a more fine-grained workflow, particularly with versions, we are working on this. Permissions changes in the editor tend to be very involved, so I would imagine this is going to take us at least a couple months to get out, but I wanted you to know that it's coming in case it's something that matters to you. Aside from that, I get to talk about a few things that are not within KnowledgeOwl, the software product. We are also starting to try to showcase some of the things that our owls do beyond KnowledgeOwl. So there's a little call out to this in this month's product newsletter in the text version. We have a separate newsletter list for events and webinars. You can opt into that by hitting the Update Your Preferences link in the footer of the product newsletter. I'm just going to highlight some of the biggest, most exciting things, but that events and webinars list will give you an email whenever we have new stuff scheduled. So if any of what I'm about to say is interesting to you, please sign up for it. First off, huge shout out to Marybeth Alexander, our chief executive owl. She is starting to be a lot more vocal of a CEO in public. So she started doing podcast interviews, lightning talks, fireside chats. Most of the events that we're talking about are things that she's doing right now. I'm going to share the YouTube recording of a podcast episode she did with Caffeinated CX, talking about knowledge bases as valuable customer success tools. This also talks a little bit about KnowledgeOwl's evolution. The podcast episode hasn't been published yet, but the YouTube version of it is. This is a very unfortunate pause. Marybeth is probably not going to be happy with that facial expression, but it is out there. I'm going to link to it in the description on this video if you want to go check it out or pull the link from the product newsletter. She's also got a couple upcoming events that are linked in the newsletter. So one of these is done with our friends over at Good Words. This will be on September 27th, shockingly close to my Wisdom Wednesday on SMTP things. The topic on this one is making the business case for documentation. Links to this are shared on our LinkedIn profile. They're also in the product newsletter. I will also include the link to this in the video description on YouTube. Making the business case for documentation is always a hot topic, so this should be a really good session. The other upcoming session Marybeth has is with Support Driven. So she already did a fireside chat on knowledge management with them last month. And it went so well that she's doing part 2, which is Scaling Your Knowledge, part 2, real world examples, tactical tips, and measuring success. This session is on October 2nd, should also be a fairly fun, informative session. Support Driven is an amazing community, definitely worth checking out. And last but not least, a shout out for something that somebody did that is not Marybeth. Erica, one of our lead customer success owls, wrote this fantastic little blog post for People First Jobs talking about our 25-hour work week. If you did not know, now is your chance to learn this. Nearly everyone at KnowledgeOwl works a 25-hour work week or less. We have intentionally structured it that way. Erica's done a really nice write-up that kind of gives you a little bit behind the scenes about what our company culture is around hours and schedules and flexibility. I'm also going to embarrass her for a moment and note that the very bottom of this also gives a shout out to her painting. So one of the perks for her is that she is an artist and she paints. So she paints in the morning and then she does KnowledgeOwl stuff all day. Most of our team is doing this kind of combination, and it was really fun to see her do a blog post about this and get to share that little piece of KnowledgeOwl culture with the world. So if these kinds of outside the software but behind the scenes of KnowledgeOwl or webinar type things, they're interesting to you, be sure you subscribe to the events and webinars list and you will get emails about when we're doing this, where the things are, and that kind of thing. All right, I think that about covers it for this month. Hopefully, this is the one and only time I will have to do a combined newsletter because I forgot to hit a button. So, thank you for your patience and graciousness in this, and I will see you next month.